Sibling Sabotage. How her brother's tricks turned our romance into ruins. I still get curious looks when I meet new people and say, "So, you won't believe what happened to me and my boyfriend." They nod eagerly, expecting some crazy travel story or an epic adventure. But little do they know, the real drama began right in my own backyard, thanks to my entitled brother. Yeah, you read that right. The guy I grew up with, who always thought the world owed him a favor, decided to play matchmaker, read metal, in my love life. It started innocently enough. My brother, Alex, had been trying to set me up with his friend, Mike, for months. And by trying, I mean he bombarded me with texts and Facebook messages, convinced that we were meant to be. Now, I'm the first to admit, Mike does seem like a nice guy, charming, funny, and has a mean sense of humor. But after months of getting to know each other, I thought we had reached a comfortable level of acquaintance. My brother, however, had other plans. One Saturday evening, Alex gifted us tickets to a popular concert in town, ensuring, of course, that Mike would be right by my side. As it turned out, Mike already had plans with his ex, Sarah. Yeah, I know, red flags many. Still, my brother won't listen. Now, imagine walking into a sold-out concert with your would-be date 10 minutes late, only to find his ex waiting at the entrance with the biggest smile on her face. Picture this. My brother stuck to us both, enthusiastically talking about connection and opportunity. It was like watching a bad reality TV show, cringeworthy and delightfully entertaining at the same time. Needless to say, that outing ended with an uncoordinated goodbye, me getting lost in the crowd, and Alex face-palming. Who isn't proud of their sibling embarrassing themselves, right? Because of course, it wasn't working out according to his grand scheme. I've met my fair share of people who think the world revolves around them. That's not a bad thing, right? I mean, who wouldn't want to be the center of attention every now and then? But let me tell you, I've met some pretty difficult people in my life, and I've lost count of the number of times I've bitten my tongue to avoid a full-blown argument. But there's one person who stands out in my mind, not because of what they did, although trust me, that's a whole other story, but because of the sheer audacity they displayed on a daily basis. This isn't about my ex-girlfriend's best friend, although yes, she was the one who started the fire that would set off a chain reaction of drama in our relationship. But believe it or not, that's a story for another time. No, this story is about someone who took entitlement to a whole new level. A level I thought only existed in the most cringeworthy family holiday stories. I remember thinking at the beginning of our relationship that I was marrying not just a person, but their entire family too. And let me tell you, it was a blessing in disguise that I didn't inherit their brother's quirks. But more on that later. The person I'm talking about was her mother's sister's son, a distant relative, but seemingly very close to the heart, or so it seemed. This person, let's call them Aunt Sarah's son for simplicity's sake, was the embodiment of selfishness, and to an extent, I was both horrified and fascinated by their antics. From demanding to be the only guest at family gatherings, expecting a thank you text within minutes of receiving a gift, this person's sense of entitlement knew no bounds. I often found myself questioning whether they genuinely believed the world owed them a favor, or if they just genuinely lacked empathy. The possibilities were endless, and the worst part was, they often got their way due to a misplaced sense of authority. I never thought I'd say this to someone who took a liking to them, but Aunt Sarah's son would go down in history as one of the most frustrating yet entertaining individuals to ever cross my path. Who knew that someone so infuriating could bring so much comedic gold to my life? The dynamic duo, my ex-girlfriend's best friend Tim and me, in a battle for the ages. Or should I say, a battle for the sanity of those around me? I mean, it's not every day you meet someone who's got the passion, dedication, and sheer audacity to throw a person down a flight of stairs. I know what you're thinking. Has this guy ever seen a soap opera? Well, folks, let me tell you, this was the real deal, albeit with more bruised egos and shattered dreams. But in all seriousness, Tim was no ordinary friend. He was the kind of guy who'd make you question your life choices, wonder if you're worthy of love, and in some cases, make you doubt your own sanity. And at the time, I was at the receiving end of his brand of entitlement/revenge/sociopathy. To understand the magnitude of this situation, you need to envision a villainous mastermind, minus the charm, minus the sophistication, and plus, a lot more reckless abandon. It all started when he convinced my girlfriend to break up with me. I'm talking the works, emotional manipulation, gaslighting, the whole shebang. I must have broken up with her 3 times before the 3rd time actually stuck. Mind you, I didn't realize at the time that this was all part of his master plan. I just thought, okay, maybe we need some space. Maybe we just need to cool off. Yeah, that, until I found out he'd been feeding her trash talk about me the whole time. But that was just the tip of the iceberg. See, Tim had a flair for the dramatic, almost artistic, in fact. Yes, I'll admit it was entertaining in a sick way. He was the mastermind behind our latest breakup, and the catalyst for even more fireworks, excitement to come. Fast forward to the world-renowned incident involving him and myself hurtling towards an intersection of concrete and steel as we faced off in the most theatrical way possible. Stairs, concrete, steel. What difference does it make, really? All I remember is the feeling of weightlessness, a sudden sense of peace. No wait. It was a rude awakening, followed by an involuntarily shrieked ow. It was also the beginning of the time when life handed me lemons, and I've made about a decade's worth of lemonade with an attitude. I still remember the day I shipped out for my first Special Forces deployment, like it was yesterday. Who wouldn't be excited to spend their days crawling through the mud, getting yelled at by their drill sergeant, and learning how to survive off the grid? It was like a real-life game of Call of Duty, minus the video game mess. I was part of an elite unit, the kind of guys who got called in for the toughest ops. We were the A-team, minus the wisecracking and occasional danger to innocent civilians. My job was to sneak around, disrupt enemy supply lines, and get out before anyone even knew what hit them. It was exhilarating, to say the least. But of course, all good things must come to an end. A concussion from a botched CTOP exercise in the jungle put a pretty big damper on things. Who needs a career-ending injury when you're single in your early 20s, right? I lost count of how many times I had to repeat the phrase, "I'm fine. I just need to rest my eye," to my Special Forces doc. Recovery was interesting. First, I got stuck in a cramped hospital room with my high school sweetheart, Sarah, who had somehow magically reappeared in my life after a decade apart. I don't know, maybe my parents decided to play Cupid or something. Either way, it was like a cosmic, medically induced romance novel come to life. At first, things were as perfect as idyllic small-town romance promises. We'd laugh, hold hands, and enjoy long, tedious therapy sessions together. It was like having a built-in nurse, except she'd do more than just change my sterile gauze. But little did I know, Sarah had a secret sibling, a master of the dark arts, i.e., brotherly love turned toxic. I remember the day the brother showed up at our doorstep, like it was yesterday. I was already on edge, and him barging in didn't exactly help. He was this towering figure, with a messy beard and a wayward air about him. I swear, he looked like he'd just rolled out of a K-pop music video. It turns out, this guy used to work with Sarah years ago. They'd been colleagues, bonding over late-night coffee at Dunkin' Donuts, and who knows what else. That's the thing about Sarah, she's always been a people person. She takes to anyone new, instantly. I've often joked she has a magical magnetism for picking up strays. And the brother was indeed a stray, lost, confused, and going through some weird stuff. Fast forward to this one fateful day when the brother starts calling Sarah. Not just calling, mind you, pleading for help. Like someone's dropped him in the middle of a ticking time bomb, and he's got his finger on the countdown timer, hoping someone will spot him in time. The level of desperation in his voice was unlike anything I'd ever heard. I winced at the mere thought of it. What's more, the brother had been dealing with a pretty nasty habit, addiction. I recall Sarah specifically mentioning OxyContin during that anxious phone call I eavesdropped on. Don't judge me, I was invested. No wonder he looked so rough around the edges. I tried picturing the brother shaking it off, jumping from party to party like the hottest life of the party at a Sigma Pi frat house. But no, the poor guy was drowning in debts and medical bills. Given my natural wariness, who expects this kind of trouble on their doorstep? You'd think Sarah wouldn't budge. But nope. She'd already seen better days with the brother, and instead of him falling deeper into despair, she offered him a lifeline. That was the moment, as the old saying goes, when trouble was coming to visit. Oh boy, where do I even start with her brothers? Disrespect? I'm not sure if it's true that you can't choose your family, but if I had $1 for every time I thought, "You've got to be kidding me," when his brother walked into the room, I'd have enough money to start my own Netflix show. Let me tell you, this guy took entitlement to a whole new level. He was like a modern-day king, expecting his sister to cater to his every whim, while I was just trying to navigate the complex landscape of their family drama. It started innocently enough, or so I thought. His sister would cook for him, do his laundry, and even buy his groceries. I mean, I get it, family is all about supporting each other, but this was on a whole different level. It was like he had a personal concierge service at his beck and called 24/7. But the real kicker was when I refused to wash his dishes one day. Yeah, you read that right. One day. It was like I had committed the ultimate betrayal. His reaction was priceless, a mixture of horror, disgust, and utter disdain, all rolled into one facial expression that screamed, "How dare you?" I remember thinking to myself, is this guy for real? But what really got my attention was when he started lecturing me on the importance of doing household chores. I mean, I get it, helping out around the house is great, but come on, you're 35 years old, and you're still having your mama, or in this case, your little sister, do your laundry? The worst part was that his sister just took it in stride. She was like, "Oh no, I'll get those dishes done for you." And he just nodded and smiled, like it was the most normal thing in the world. It was like I was trapped in some kind of bizarre reality show, where the script was written by Aaron Brockovich, and the roles were reversed. Only I was the one being portrayed as the villain. But in all seriousness, it was a wake-up call for me. I realized that I was caught in the middle of a real-life drama, and I had two choices. I could either try to navigate this crazy family dynamic, or get out while I still had my sanity intact. As I looked at him and his sisters, I knew that I had made up my mind. I had to escape this toxic world before I lost my mind for good. And let me tell you, that was a relief like no other. I still remember the exact moment when things came to a head with my brother. No pun intended. It was like the fire festival of sibling confrontations, and I'm surprised I still have my dignity intact, barely. You see, Mike and I have a long history of playful pranks and good-natured teasing, but one fateful day, I decided to call him out on his constant meddling in my love life. I'm not sure what possessed me, but I mustered up the courage to stand up to him. I mean, literally stood up, looking him straight in the eye, and said, "Dude, stop. Stop being a major buzzkill." His response, a mixture of anger, confusion, and what can only be described as a dash of disapproving dad. He didn't like that, not one bit. What followed was something out of a bad action movie, with him pushing me down, yes, actually pushing, and jumping on top of me like he was about to administer some justice. Now, I'm not one to shy away from a physical confrontation. Thank you, boot camp. But in this instance, I was more concerned about being restrained from delivering a well-deserved kick in the shin. If Sarah hadn't intervened, well, let's just say my military training was about to kick in, and it wouldn't have ended well for him. The thought of a grinning, drill sergeant wannabe him slinking away, cussing under his breath, with a good dose of humility, was too delicious to contemplate. It was at that moment I finally realized that my brother's behavior wasn't just harmless sibling rivalry. It was toxic, controlling, and a definite match for my explosive temper. As I caught my breath, with Mike still hovering over me, though with a somewhat sheepish grin, Sarah took charge, diffusing the situation with her calm, collected self. The question was, would our relationship withstand the trial by fire, or would it collapse under the weight of our sibling shenanigans? Ugh, the memory still gives me hives. So, it's like my girlfriend's brother comes to me, smirking like he's James Bond, and says, "Hey buddy, you know what's at stake here? My sister's happiness, that's what." I'm thinking to myself, dude, you're the reason she's unhappy in the first place. I'm trying to remain calm, not that it's easy when you're dealing with a guy like him. He's like a combination of a used car salesman and a bad episode of The Terminator. All charm and no substance. So he's like, "It's really simple, man. My sister has to choose between you and me." And I'm like, wow, that's such a unique twist on "you're going to pick me anyway." Talk about original. I swear, I've seen that movie before. He's dead serious, though. His entitled little eyes are burning with an intensity that says, "You've messed with the wrong guy." I'm thinking, little do you know, buddy, I've got a whole arsenal of witty comebacks and sarcastic remarks just waiting to be unleashed. But I digress. The part that still makes me chuckle is when he says, "I know you think you're the hero here, but let me tell you, pal, you're just a zero. My sister deserves someone who actually takes care of her, not some wannabe special forces, dude who's more broken than a pair of Walmart glasses." That's when it hits me. This guy is like a high school debate team champion, minus the charming charisma. Okay, maybe that's a stretch, but you get the idea. In the end, I lost the battle, but I won the war. Well, not really, but my girlfriend chose her brother, and that was the end of us. Not because she loved him more, but because he convinced her that I was toxic, and that he was the better partner. I'm pretty sure I've heard that one before. Anyway, that was the ultimate cop-out, leaving me with nothing but a heart full of what-ifs and could-haves. I thought I'd finally found some peace after my brother-in-law's, _in-laws, antics almost destroyed our relationship. But that was just the beginning. I mean, I thought we'd hit rock bottom when he'd try to play matchmaker with disastrous results. But nope, he decided to take it up a notch. But it didn't end there. Soon after, my property started getting vandalized. I'm not talking about your run-of-the-mill property damage like broken fences or slashed tires. No, this was on a much grander scale. My beautiful garden, which I'd lovingly nurtured for years, was suddenly turned into a war zone. Tulips were uprooted, bushes were upended, and my prized succulents were reduced to a pile of pot-empty splendor. I took it in stride at first, assuming it was just some prank gone wrong. After all, I'd dealt with enough teenage drama to last a lifetime. But little did I know, this was just the tip of the iceberg. Someone tried to set my house down with a lit match. Again. Yes, you read that right. Again. It was like my brother-in-law had declared war on our peaceful suburban life. I was starting to think he'd partnered up with Voldemort to take over the world one burnt building at a time. I called the police, filed reports, even had surveillance footage ready to turn over as evidence, but it was all just a big exercise in futility. The cameras couldn't catch clear faces in the dark, which meant no culprit, no justice, and no closure. But here's the kicker. I received a handwritten note from the would-be arsonist. A beautiful, cursive note that read, "You'll never find out who did it." Little did I know that this was just the beginning of a real-life game of Clue. I'm not sure what's more surprising, the fact that I managed to defend myself against 3 attackers, or the fact that my brother's fragile ego survived a night of getting outsmarted and outgunned. I mean, I'm not a vigilante, but I do have a few tricks up my sleeve, courtesy of my Glock 19, which I've lovingly nicknamed Baby. As the brother and his goons showed up at my doorstep, uninvited, I could sense the desperation in their eyes. Little did they know, I'd been preparing for this moment for weeks. I had set up an elaborate system of tripwires, which, when triggered, released a barrage of foam darts to distract them. Yeah, it's not the most conventional method of defense, but hey, it's effective. The first goon to enter my living room was wearing a ridiculous outfit, a neon green jumpsuit with a shimmering silver vest. I'm pretty sure he thought he was being stealthy, but really, he was just screaming, "I'm a cyberpunk wannabe." As he made his way towards me, I accidentally left a whoopee cushion on the couch, which, when sat on, filled the room with a loud, cartoonish fart sound. The poor guy was completely taken aback, stumbling backwards like a toddler who's just eaten a spicy taco. Meanwhile, the second goon was attempting to sneak up behind me, but I had anticipated this move. I had set up a reverse-painted cupboard that looked like a normal, boring door, but actually swung open to reveal a hidden whoopee cushion-filled closet. Yeah, I know, it's not exactly the most intimidating thing in the world, but when you're expecting a life-or-death battle, a whoopee cushion explosion is a nice change of pace. The third goon was actually the most aggressive, thinking he could just waltz in and take me down. Little did he know, I had rigged the coffee table to be a makeshift springboard designed to launch random household items at him. That poor guy got hit with a flying toaster, a lamp, and what can only be described as a fluffy, irate rabbit pillow. By the time the dust settled and the police showed up, there were 3 downed attackers and 1 severely injured brother. I'm pretty sure my brother will be sporting a fancy new wheeled walker for a while, and I'll be sporting a permanent grin on my face, knowing that I outsmarted those fools and got to enjoy a nice, quiet cup of coffee the next morning, complete with a smirk and a satisfied hum. Now, my brother's still got plenty of tricks up his sleeve, and I'm sure our sibling rivalry will continue to be the stuff of local legend. But hey, at least I can say I outgunned him, and with style. The aftermath was a wild ride, let me tell you. I mean, I'd gone from being a rugged ex-Special Forces operative to a depressed, stay-at-home dad trying to piece my life back together. It was like someone had taken all the puzzle pieces and thrown them off a cliff. First things first, I spent a solid 6 months wondering if I'd made a huge mistake. Had I overreacted? Should I have just let the brother stay? Could I have done something differently to prevent all the chaos that ensued? The guilt was suffocating me, and all I wanted to do was crawl under a rock and hide. But life had other plans. One day, I woke up, looked in the mirror, and said, you know what? I'm not going to cry about this anymore. It was a light bulb moment, folks. I realized I'd spent the last few months watching a soap opera about my own life, and it was time to change the channel. Next up, I started taking care of myself. I joined a gym, not because I was trying to get buff, but because I needed a safe space to sweat out my emotions. I started learning new skills online. Knitting was not one of them, thankfully. And I even attempted to cook a few meals that didn't involve ramen noodles. It was a miracle, I tell you. But the best part of this new chapter was the people I met along the way. There was Mike, the rugged gym rat who became my workout buddy and confidant. Sarah, the crafty knitting guru who taught me the basics. Don't tell anyone I'm still watching YouTube tutorials. And Rachel, my patient therapist who helped me work through my PTSD and anxiety issues. Now, I know what you're thinking. PTSD? Aren't you a Special Forces vet? Well, the truth is, the brothers' antics didn't help, but the initial injury I sustained during my time in service did. It was a ticking time bomb just waiting to be triggered by stress, anxiety, or, in this case, a particularly pesky, entitled younger sibling. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. PTSD is no joke. The flashbacks, the nightmares, the inability to sleep at night. It was a roller coaster I didn't want to ride, but I knew I had to. I had to confront those demons head-on and learn how to manage them. The good news is that, with time and effort, I did eventually get better. And what a liberating feeling it was to finally feel like myself again. I started to enjoy life, to look forward to things, and to not feel like I was walking on eggshells all the time. And speaking of things not going as planned, did I mention that a few months after all the craziness died down, I got a call from my mom? Guess what, she said. Your brother is actually getting married. Yeah, I know, right? Like the universe was one big punchline. I'm sitting here, reflecting on how my life has turned out, and I have to chuckle every now and then. It's like a crazy comedy show that keeps unfolding. 8 years ago, my so-called perfect world came crumbling down, all thanks to a sibling who thought he was a bit too clever. At the time, I was in the military, or so I thought. I'd met this amazing woman, and we were head over heels in love. Well, I say we, but what I mean is I thought I'd found the love of my life. Love that was until her brother, James, came along and decided to play the role of a meddling matchmaker. Long story short, he played sabotage expert, and my world soon turned upside down. After the ordeal, I decided that I'd had enough of the military life. It was time for a change. So, I decided to hang up my uniform and join the private sector. It wasn't an easy transition, but I soon found my footing. I made new friends, learned new skills, and even started a new family of my own. Who knew that life had such a great sense of humor? It's as if they say, when life gives you lemons, make lemonade. But for me, it was more like, when life gives you sabotage, make a funny story out of it. Today, as I look back, I'm still married to the woman of my dreams. You could say we're a dynamic duo, and we've been through our fair share of ups and downs. We've got a strong bond, and I wouldn't trade it for the world. She knows all my secrets, and I know all hers. In fact, we're even talking about starting a family soon. Can you believe it? A family of our own. Something I never thought I'd be a part of after the crazy world of my past. It's funny how life works out sometimes. You'd think that trouble would follow you forever, but for me, it led to something amazing, a great partner, a chance to start anew, and a new life in the private sector. I never thought I'd say this, but I'm grateful for that sabotage. It taught me that you can turn any situation into a comedy, and that love knows no limits. My wife often jokes that I'm the luckiest man alive, and I think she might be right. But then, there's a part of me that thinks maybe I'm just the most resilient guy in the world. Either way, life has been kind to me, and I couldn't be happier. All I can do is sit back, think about how far I've come, and shake my head in amusement. Last month, I got a Google alert that shook me to my core. I'm still not entirely sure why I requested notifications on my brother's name to begin with, but I'm glad I did. It served as a harsh reminder of the complicated web of relationships we often find ourselves in. The news flashed on my screen. My brother had been killed in prison. Yep, you read that right. It wasn't a heart condition or a rare illness that took him from us. It was a combination of bad choices and poor life decisions. I couldn't help but think about the countless times our family bailiffs would show up at our doorstep, asking for another large sum to post bail. Just like that, the story had its final chapter. As I sat there staring at my phone, I couldn't help but feel a mix of emotions. Do I feel happy about it? No. Relieved? Maybe. But mostly, I just feel free. Free from the weight of all that happened. free from the constant stress of wondering when the next drama would unfold, free from the late-night fights over who was to blame for his latest antics, free from the feeling of being trapped in a never-ending cycle of guilt and worry. Looking back, it's amazing how much energy our family spent on trying to deal with his toxic behavior. We went to therapy sessions, counseling sessions, and even tried AA meetings to get him to change his ways. But in the end, it wasn't about us. It was about him and his choices. Sometimes the people who hurt us the most aren't strangers. They're the ones closest to the people we love. But here's what I learned. You can't control other people's choices. You can only control how you respond to them. And let's be real, responding to our brother's drama was starting to feel like a one-man circus. Looking directly at camera, I've come to realize that everyone has a breaking point. And for me, it was finally getting that Google alert. It was the wake-up call I needed to start taking care of myself, rather than sacrificing my well-being for someone else's behavior. With my brother's demise, something shifted within me. I started to prioritize my own needs and focus on nurturing the positive relationships in my life. I began to talk to friends and family about what I went through, and much to my surprise, I wasn't alone. If there's one thing I've learned from this whole experience, it's that surviving is not the same as thriving. But I'm determined to thrive, even in the face of adversity. And who knows, maybe this is the start of a brand new chapter in my life.